Voices was selected for the reading series at the Second International Women Playwright Festival in Toronto, Canada, and was produced by the Evergreen Theatre Festival. She's an attorney, and she lectures widely on racism, anti-Semitism, and homophobia. She received her MFA in fiction from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, where she was awarded a writing fellowship and has been a writer in residence at the Berkshire Forum. She's an award-winning short story writer whose work appears in over 20 newspapers, literary journals, and anthologies. Her work can be found in The Tribe of Dinah. Is that Dinah? Dina? Dina. Well, I stand corrected. Word of Mouth, Loss of the Ground Note, Speaking for Ourselves, in journals such as Tikkun, Bridges, Lambda Book Report, Sojourner, and the National Women's Studies Journal. And without further ado, Jolynn Feldman.
I have a favor to ask you. I really hate to look at empty seats in the front. I don't mind in the back. So I'd really appreciate if you could help me out, and some of you move at least right up these first few seats here. That would be great. Oh, that was easy. I thought this was going to take all night. You were just waiting for me, weren't you? Oh, much better. You should stand up here sometime and look at empty seats. So is this all right? The tone's okay? Not piercing your eardrums? Okay, good. I'm really happy to be here. And Stephen took me out to dinner, thank you. And Charles picked me up. I don't know where Charles is, but thank you, Charles. And tonight, what I'm going to do is read a little bit, perform a little bit of my work from Hot Chicken Wings, and then I hope that you'll ask me lots of questions about the work or about being a gay activist, whatever. And if you don't, I'll ask you a lot of questions. So one way or another, we'll have a discussion. And before I start, I want to tell you a little bit about Hot Chicken Wings. It's not a cookbook. People think that all the food in it, it ought to be. And sometimes I think I'd sell more copies if I put it in the food department. You'll know what I'm talking about very shortly. You're going to hear a lot in the first piece of Hebrew and Yiddish. Those are languages that Jews speak. You may or may not be familiar with this. I've taken a big risk because I'm not going to translate the words first. I'm going to let you see if you get it from the meaning of the story. And in the back of the book, there is a glossary. My reason for not explaining the words has a lot to do with knowing that all of us come from more than one culture. We may not all be aware of it. I come from at least 4 different cultures that I can name: a Jew, a lesbian, the culture of artists, and we can talk about the culture of political activism, but specifically the cultures I'm going to deal with tonight are Jewish culture and lesbian, gay, and bisexual culture. And I've learned from my Latina sisters not to edit out my own bilingualism. So you're going to hear that tonight, and I really owe a great deal to them. I spent the first 20 years of my life taking all the Hebrew and Yiddish out. So tonight I'm putting it all back in. I'm going to start with a very risky piece, but these are risky times we live in, right? We'll talk about that. This is the introduction to Hot Chicken Wings. It's very unusual to start a story collection with a piece of, I call it fraction, a combination of fact and a little fiction. But between you and me, it's mostly fact. And I did this, you'll know why after I read it to you. And we'll talk about the politics of starting with the truth instead of story. So here we go. This is called The Forbidden. I am sitting at the dinner table. with my father Marvin and my mother Edith. My sisters, Judy and Jan, are also sitting with us, although it feels to me as though they are sitting at another table on the other side of the room, or possibly another restaurant entirely. When we order, I imagine the table splitting in half. Judy and Jan fall off the left side. Their silverware and dishes follow noisily behind. The flower arrangement, a limp pink astromeria and a piece of dead green fern, remain upright in a small plastic vase on the right side of the table, where I remain, split off from my sisters and connected temporarily to my parents. For their entire meal, my sisters have ordered baby shrimp cocktails in thick-stemmed parfait dishes with spiced tomato sauce for dipping and dunking. The rest of us order kosher style. No pork, no shellfish, no milk or meat eaten together. My sisters enjoy their food immensely, commenting on the freshness of the fish, its delightful taste, and the low calorie count of shrimp. My father makes no eye contact with my sisters. He refuses to even look at their half of the table, as though it contains a highly contagious disease that he will catch in a single glance. Judy and Jan make eye contact with their parfait dishes. They smile lovingly at the chilled baby shrimp tucked inside, while my mother stares at me as if the fact that my sisters ordered treif is all my fault. Actually, it is my father's fault. He made a rule. He made a rule about what his children could eat, when and where we could eat it. With much fierceness, he tried to protect us from the goyim. It didn't work. At home, my mother kept a strictly kosher kitchen with separate dishes for milk and meat. Absolutely no pork or shellfish was ever allowed in the house. Before arriving in my mother's sink, our chickens were ritually blessed and rabbi slaughtered. Sticking out of the tuchus, there were always a few feathers left by the shochet, firm proof that his chickens were glatt kosher. When we finally did eat out, we were allowed to order whatever we wanted. By then, my sisters had developed unnatural cravings for shellfish, and my mother felt no hunger whatsoever. And me, I developed an insatiable appetite whose manifestation occurs today in the form of a Jewish, lesbian, vegetarian chicken writer. What makes me a Jewish lesbian writer is the fact that my beloved parents kept kosher and longed for their progeny to do the same. Keeping kosher means eating only that food which is permitted according to Jewish law, and avoiding all else. That which is forbidden is treif. So, it is the very act of eating that makes my stories Jewish. Lurking in the background of every scene I write is a sense of the forbidden. The fact that my characters behave in ways that are politically incorrect, and that my subject matter is often taboo in both the Jewish and lesbian universe, can be traced back to my sister's unnatural cravings for shellfish. But what makes my stories lesbian, with the emphasis on Jewish, is the fact that my characters don't just imagine what eating pussy is like, they actually eat it. And eating pussy for me is just like eating treif. Culturally specific metaphors compel the direction of my narrative voice. For instance, I am preoccupied with otherness, not just because I am a lesbian, but because I am a Jew. My characters are obsessed with identity in general, not just gay or Jewish identity. Voice for me is oral, not linear. Sentences that feel flat on the page live when spoken. I come from an oral tradition that relies on humor to survive and is difficult to transcribe while retaining nuance and rhythm. As a Jew, writing in an acquired language, I may split infinitives, separate subjects from verbs, or use gerunds in the wrong place. I may write in a syntax that is grammatically incorrect, yet culturally located within the immigrant Jewish experience. English, the language of forced assimilation, is not the essential language of my people. When I write, existential fatigue of a particularly Jewish nature threatens to consume me, because the life saga of my people exceeds the limits of my imagination. What could I possibly say that would illuminate the situation? Less than 50 years ago, Eastern European Jews were rounded up. Our arms were tattooed with 4-digit numbers. We were gassed in showers, baked in ovens. Gold was extracted from our teeth. Surgical experiments were routinely performed on our bodies, while boatloads of starving Jews were routinely turned away from these united shores. Less than 50 years later, the government of Israel ghettoizes an entire people, closes schools and universities. Jewish soldiers just follow orders, bulldoze Palestinian houses, fight stones with guns. Today, in my search for story, traditional literary conventions have become useless. Creative irony eludes me. My plots lack traditional resolution. I have lost all fictive pretense. Out of cultural necessity, those artificial boundaries artfully constructed between reader and writer have all but disappeared from my work. When I write, I seek to explode the boundary of the page. Formlessness is the real challenge. While those who once were occupied become the occupiers, I wait for the mutuality of recognition between the sons of Abraham. Brother to brother, I wait for Isaac to see Ishmael and be seen. This is my story. What else can I write? I wait for the sounds of laughter, of Sarah and Hagar return to each other, side by side in the desert wind. And the living story is filled with symbolic impossibility, too deep to decipher, as a nation of survivors carry gas masks made in Germany, while waiting in the terror of sealed rooms for a dreaded chemical attack. When the first Scud missiles land in Tel Aviv, a working-class neighborhood inhabited by Jews of color, of Iraqi descent, Palestinians living under curfew and originally denied gas masks, run out into their occupied streets, shouting, "Kill the Jews." In this moment, the hope I have for the liberation of lesbian and gay people of all classes and colors clashes with the hopelessness I feel for the isolation of my people. I am a Jewish lesbian writer in mourning for a people who have lost the integrity of our vision. For the first time in my life, I am without metaphor. But because I am a Jewish lesbian writer, I must bear witness. In their terror, my people have lost their minds. But what about our memories? I want you to know me, not only as a lesbian, but as a Jew. To understand those places of intersection and disconnection where lesbian and Jewish identity impact on my writing. Familiarize yourself with the ways of my people. Ask me about the cost of white skin privilege and Jewish invisibility. I seek recognition and dialogue from assimilated, religious, secular, culturally identified, politically active, gay, lesbian, bisexual Jews, straight, heterosexual, mainstream Jews, white Gentiles, the working class, women and men of color, Israelis, and Palestinians. As a lesbian, I do not want my work marginalized by the Jewish community or trivialized by gays and lesbians simply because I am a Jew. The voices of my people belong within the parameters of a multicultural literature. The consequences of seeing me as white and not also as a Jew is that I am never, ever actually seen at all by the viewer. This infuses my writing with the surreal as I stretch the limits of reality on the page. Finally, we return to dinner with the Fellmans, to the family table split in half. We return to the surreal image of those who eat the forbidden and fall off the left side. I watch my sisters fall silently through the floor of the restaurant to wander in orbit forever. You will understand then that it became impossible for me to give up eating chicken when I became a Jewish lesbian vegetarian. Eating chicken is the ritualization of my identity as a Jew. When I ate only green things from the earth, I began to forget the smells of my mother's kitchen and my grandmother's kitchen. I began to forget that being a Jew is about remembering everything. So you can see it a little risky to start fiction with that. We could talk about it now, but I think what I'd like to do is get into the fiction, and then we'll talk after that. I'm going to read you, my stories are very long, so what I've decided to do is read you part of a story that's in two parts, and then we'll stop and talk, and if you want to hear a little more after we talk, I'll close with a final piece. This one, I think, you'll be able to apply the fact to the fiction. And I want to tell you that this story comes in three voices. And I'm going to read you one of the voices. And the name of the story is Voices. I can't believe the way your body moves around the court. I stop to watch. I have to stop. I can't help myself. I see myself in you, but you don't know, do you? Do you have any idea? I want to walk right up to you in the middle of class, stand next to you, and take your arm back in a graceful, full circle sweep so I can look directly in your eyes and tell you, but I can't. I cannot move out from among the others, not now. It wouldn't look right. All I can do is watch and not draw attention to my watching. The way you play the net, meet the ball, line drive, always keeping your elbow curved in close to your strong, tight body. You're a skillful dancing warrior, hitting on the run with a speeding forehand that slices the air. Your strength embarrasses me. Do you know? Do you have any idea how much I want you? I tell myself not to look away, not to be afraid, but there is always fear, the fear of myself and the loathing of women like me. We love and despise each other. Look and look away from deep inside our buried desire. We keep our hunger to ourselves, even though the longing is consuming. So half a court away, I hold my eyes still. My eyes wait for your eyes. I need you to understand. I didn't know the difference. The world of women who went with women was hidden, a big secret to me. I didn't know the difference between being out or in. Everybody was in. Marriage was a necessary part of my education. I found a husband the way I found a subject to major in. At the end of my sophomore year, I picked them both when I had to declare. I couldn't graduate without an engagement ring solidly in place on my left fourth finger. I moved out of the dorm in May, married in June, and left the city for the suburbs in July. After a honeymoon to Niagara Falls, David and I set up house in a one-bedroom duplex surrounded by other young married couples who were just like us. I knew how to coach girls' sports, but I had no idea how to be a wife. The world of women-loving women receded into my imagination. Past relationships became infatuations. I remembered infatuations only as late-night crushes. Crushes were slight flirtatious moments, diversions from schoolwork and exams, until I barely admitted, even to myself who knew better, to anything more than the way the girls in the dorm gave each other breast exams. I knew I was not one of them. My survival depended on complete denial. It was the most appropriate response at the time, if you loved one of your own. That fall, I started my first full-time job, junior high coaching and teaching physical education. David worked construction. I had married a real man, strong, secure, and completely heterosexual. 6 years later, your arm arching in that slow full moon serve caught my eye. The edge of the wooden frame sliced through my vision as I stood half a court away. I had to stop what I was doing. In that single moment, I knew I was living a lie. But I couldn't imagine that my life would ever be different. That in 12, 13 years, homosexuals would march up Fifth Avenue, dancing and giving speeches in the park. All I knew was that I had to have you. I was not interested in being your teacher. I didn't see your age, my husband, or the school as obstacles. I didn't see. I saw you, only you. How bad could that have been? I do not believe I hurt you. That is a lie you are hurting me with now. 17 years ago, my choices were limited to the subjects I could teach and the proper role of a wife. None of the women who loved women lived openly together. Public displays of affection, one hand lightly, humanly touching another, were cause for arrest. In college, when we dared to go out, the streets were always thick with hatred. Gay bashing and dyke fucking were real sports. McCarthy was God. Roy Cohn was a saint. This is what I'm trying to explain to you. The only sex I ever had was quick. There was no time for love-making, foreplay, long champagne baths like you have today. You have no idea what it was like. For me, for them, for women like us who wanted to be together. There were no choices like you have today. It was not fair. I had to marry. After college, there was no genuine way to find each other. Right after we were married, And before the memories faded for good, I took the train into the city. It wasn't safe alone, but I had to go. Once inside the bar, a tattooed woman dressed like a man asked me to dance. As she circled me around the tiny dance floor, she drew me to her, and our bodies met. From the moment I'd walked in, I was filled with desire and the agonizing fear that the red light would come on, signaling a raid. I knew if I was caught touching another woman, my name would be in all the papers. So after less than an hour, when the side of her hot face rested lightly next to mine, I stopped in the middle of the dance floor, left her warm cheek cold, and walked straight out the door. I don't know how I made it home, and I never, ever went back. Where I lived with David, I had no one to talk to. There were only other young, married, pregnant women who weren't interested in careers of their own. But I found you on the tennis courts. I rescued both of us. I know I did. That is the history of women loving women, how we found each other, married or single, young or old, teacher or student. It didn't matter. There were no such thing as boundaries. Finding each other anywhere was a complete miracle. Instead of thanking me, you're telling me I hurt you. Why? Why are you doing this? I showed you the way, brought you into the life. I loved you, singled you out, gave you my full attention. I don't understand what you want me to say. Would I do it all over again if I had the chance? With you? Yes, of course. I loved you. Love you. Haven't stopped loving you all these years. You're saying we had different experiences. I don't understand. You never said no. Never said stop. Never said don't. I don't recognize you anymore. Besides, I didn't see girls who took sports seriously. By the time I got them in junior high, all the girls hated phys ed. You were different. You were an athlete with proud parents. There was no sport you didn't excel in, but tennis was your sport. I couldn't let you go, pretend I didn't notice. In college, all the female coaches dreamed about students like you. Serious female athletes. We saw ourselves as role models. We would fight for a place for young women in sports. Instead, I was assigned over 70 students per class, rather than the usual 35 or 40. The other teachers made fun of me, the anti-intellectual, who stopped reading in college to play ball. It was like nothing we'd imagined, but the worst was the rumors. Everybody, from the janitors to the principals, thought any female coach was queer. Why else would she teach a locker room subject? I didn't have a chance. I couldn't so much as put an arm around a female student who fell on the basketball court, crying out in pain. I didn't dare touch any single student, rub shoulders, or even bear hug with the winning team at the end of the game. And I had to teach in a pleated skirt with matching shorts underneath and knee socks. When I graduated, I chose to marry David because the rumors terrified me. I'd convinced myself he was a good man, that I wasn't queer. Queers were child molesters, dirty old men, or big butches on motorcycles with red and green tattoos on their arms. I threw myself into my work to finding any female student who took sports seriously. I didn't look or touch a single student until you. That's the truth. I no longer thought of myself as interested in women. I had distanced myself completely from any form of homosexuality. By then, just the thought of it, homoerotic love, made me sick. But seeing you on the court, I couldn't look away from you or me. In my mind, I made a separate box for homosexuals, faggots, and bull dykes. I put you and me in another corner of my brain for protection. It was a huge risk to get involved. I could have lost my husband, my job, my license to teach for good, or been locked up in women's detention. How could I possibly have hurt you? The risk was all mine. I don't understand what you're saying. You were just a kid. I only wanted to show you the way. When I finally told David that I was a lesbian, his first question was about you. After I answered, he sat down and cried at the same kitchen table where the three of us had eaten our dinners. He said he felt so betrayed, and you're saying the same thing. I did love David, not exactly the way he loved me, but I was faithful to him the entire 15 years of our marriage. I never looked at another man. He said that wasn't the point. A week after we signed the separation papers, we met for coffee. I had heard from friends that he thought he married someone else. As soon as he sat down, he turned to me and said, loud enough for all the other customers to hear, that I had lied to him. Then he walked out and drove away in the red Chevy wagon. That was the last time he ever spoke to me. Now you're saying I lied to you too. But I gave you my best. I was completely faithful to both of you. This isn't fair. I am not a bad person. I am not a child molester. We had a relationship, you and me. Don't you remember when I kissed you for the first time? How good it felt to finally taste you in my mouth, me in yours, our mouths together after months of waiting. We had made a wonderful dinner, fried chicken wings and mashed potatoes, the small red russet ones you always liked. You were leaving for vacation. I was scared. I knew I had to let you know what I was feeling and what I knew you were feeling for me. I got up to walk you to the door. In the hallway, away from David and the TV, I took your hand, then your arm. Reaching for your whole body, I pushed us both towards the wall. Wait a minute, I whispered, trying to calm myself. We're not going to see each other for a very long time. Let's say goodbye the right way. Then you stopped, closed your eyes, and waited. I couldn't stand the separation any longer, Pushing my legs up against your thighs, I pulled you to me before I lost my nerve. For the first time in over 6 years, I kissed a woman full-mouthed. To be inside your mouth was wonderful. To taste you so close after waiting so long. In that single kiss, I forgot I was married, a teacher, and 13 years older than you. I remembered only my own hunger to be with a woman hidden and suppressed for such a long time. I wanted the kiss to last for your vacation, so you'd come back wanting me, as I wanted you. You were so full of passion in that first kiss. I could feel how our bodies would come together. You're telling me now you were scared, but you kissed me back. I remember my surprise, thinking I would teach you how to really kiss. But you pushed hard your lips back into mine. You sucked my tongue as it came into your mouth. I don't believe you. You were hungry for me. I know you were. A kiss is a kiss. You kissed me back. That couldn't possibly have been the first time you ever kissed a woman. I want you to understand something. I didn't just love you. I adored you. Yes, so I was in the closet. Until I was almost 40. That would make anybody crazy. But I didn't do anything that anybody else in the closet didn't do. All of us were married. We didn't even know we were in the closet or what the fucking closet was all about. Everybody was married and had girls on the side. Those were the rules. I played them by the book. That was the way it was. It didn't occur to me to behave otherwise. There was no such thing as gay liberation. Just the thought of it makes me laugh. Why? Would I want to march down the street telling everybody I'm queer? Are you kidding? We had a good thing. Why are you doing this to me? Let me ask you something. If I hadn't been your teacher and we'd met in the bar, would it all be okay? Then Baby Dyke and her seasoned lover would be sitting around, reminiscing about the good old days. You'd be thanking me instead of cursing me like you're doing right this minute. The way you're talking makes me wish I'd never had a dream to help young girls in sports take themselves seriously. I could have gone into business. That's what I'd minored in. And then what? You would have grown up like I did, feeling different and loathing that difference that's at the very heart of who we are. If I'd left you as my student, you would have been afraid and passed for straight like everybody else. All the while, the pretense would have sucked the life out of you, just like it did me. No wonder I married David. Who the hell wants to be different? I tried to make a way for you and a path for both of us to follow. I couldn't do it alone. Now you want to hand me a therapy bill. You want me to pay for your rehabilitation 17 years later. Let me ask you something. You're queer, right? You got a lover, a hot ticket, waiting for you as we speak. And you were queer back then, right? So what's the problem? That's what I want to know. Because I didn't do anything to you. You were like that when I found you. That's the first truth that needs saying here. Who we were when we found each other. I never thought it would come to this. I always figured you'd miss me, that we'd end up together. But you never came back. And when you finally did,